but it was this before. It was, there is not one day that I didn't thank God for, and I'm like, there's double negatives and there was all this stuff. And I was like, we're done. And he ended the sentence
Hmm.
with the word is. And I was like, okay.
Oh
So
no.
yeah, but it was in the proofreading. So today we're going to cover our topic of choice, and it's more or less because we're noticing I'm getting some questions from some of my authors, and we want to, of course, address things that people are interested in hearing. And so one of the things that was being mentioned was tools that authors can use to write. I'm thinking we could tap into authors and editors on this one, because there are tools that I use
Hmm.
as an editor that I know would be great for my authors to use. And so really this is more or less about using those things that are available to you that will make you better or help you ease up some of that workload, or kind of speed things along. So Troy, I mean, I know that you and I have talked about this throughout the years about things that we do, and our tools of choice have kind of like, I'm sure, kind of like updated over the years. I remember specifically, just kind of like nostalgia, about 3 or 4 years ago, you and I were sitting at a lunch and we were listening to a presenter talk about something, and the topic of tools came up, and you pulled out a recorder that you had, like a
Yep.
digital recorder. And I remember thinking, wow, that's cool. Like, and just writing down the name of the recorder and going home and putting it in my Amazon cart and all the, like, it was just one of those things. It was one of those funny moments that I remember thinking back and going, oh my gosh, we've been talking about this for a long time. But
Yeah, for sure.
anyway, so I guess let's kind of categorize this. I guess let's first talk about like tools for maybe tools for plotting. Let's start there, like, or brainstorming. Like, what are some tools that you think readers and writers, and not readers, but writers and editors should use to brainstorm or to come up with ideas or to help move that creative process along?
Well, of course, my first one's going to be Plotter because I'm the
Mm-hmm.
education lead for Plotter. And
Mm-hmm.
because, and I'm just going to mention something I do that's kind of fun. We got another one coming up in the next week or so, but about every month we're going to do them, and it's basically called Plot on the Spot. And I show you how to brainstorm using Plotter, and then
Oh,
how to put
cool.
those into an outline. Yeah, it's Plot on the Spot. I create a plot in 90 minutes from an idea from the audience, and ideas from the audience, and do it live, so you can watch me do it.
Oh,
So
that'll be
it's
fun.
just
Is
like,
that's going to be on YouTube then?
yeah, it's on YouTube. The next one's
So,
coming out February 13th, if this is out by then. But
okay.
and
Yeah.
then
Perfect.
they're monthly, so if you join the Plotter wait list. But basically it's a place where you can dump your ideas about your story, about your character, about all of that stuff, and then you can organize them as you go. And you can
Right.
refine that organization process as you go. Because brainstorming is largely, so when I start, a lot of times I'll just dump a whole bunch of ideas, but I dump them into a tool that I can then move things around and decide what order things should happen in. And sometimes, like, this idea doesn't belong, I need to throw that out, different things like that. So I dump all my ideas into one place. I do it in Plotter on a timeline. And because when I do it on a plot line in Plotter, then I can move it around later and I don't have to copy and
Right.
paste it or rewrite it. But there are tons and tons of tools now that you can brainstorm in. And some of
I
them people
I
just do it
saw
in a
one
Google
yesterday.
Doc or Word doc,
Yeah.
you know?
Right. Like, you can just
Yeah.
make a list. The old school way, the OG way, was post-it notes, putting post-it notes out on a
Hmm.
wall or on a whiteboard or
Everywhere.
something. Yeah, just
Yeah.
post-it notes everywhere. I remember those days. I still do it in some way or another.
Hmm.
But I have boxes of post-it notes all over my house. But the other thing that I saw and I ran into the other day was an AI program that you can brainstorm in. So I've
Hmm.
noticed that there's a lot of new tools AI wise, that help people kind of like sift through that creative
Hmm.
process a little bit. So do you have any experience with that?
Yeah, there are several. So one of them, I mean, you can just use Chat GPT to help you create an outline by giving it prompts to just give you ideas, right? And
Hmm.
we're not going to go into prompting here and exactly how that works, because we've talked about AI before, and we could talk about it again. But there's all kinds of AI tools like that. But one of them that I use a lot is called Notebook LM, and right now it's free. It's a free tool from Google, and you can dump a whole bunch of like different articles or ideas or stuff in there, and it will help you summarize them. You can ask it questions that will help you summarize those things and distill down ideas. Now, especially if you're writing nonfiction, this is really, really helpful because it'll actually prompt you with some questions that sometimes you might not have thought of and be
Oh,
like,
wow.
okay. And that's because it's looking at the material itself. And the good thing is it's only looking at the material that you've entered. So you're not getting something off the web, so you don't have to go check in the factual part as long as you entered factual information into the
Right.
tool, kind
Be
of the
careful,
garbage in,
guys.
garbage out.
Warning.
But it will summarize a lot of things for you, and also just give you thoughts and ideas like questions to ask, because a lot of brainstorming is just asking questions. What if? What about this character? What does this character fear? Okay, how can I make them the most afraid in this story? By playing on that core
Mm.
fear. Well, that's what makes it really powerful. Or this villain is super powerful in this way, and usually your villain should be more powerful than your protagonist, and you need to illustrate that somewhere in your book. And so you can come up with ideas of what would be a villain power that would play on this character's fear. And then you
Right.
go, okay, well, now that makes a really scary villain, which makes the reader terrified of the villain, the same as the protagonist is. And it creates a great story. Anyway, it creates great conflict. So
Well,
you
that's a
can
good
use
idea.
AI tools to just ask questions. And so some of them are simple, but I like Bard is another one that I like. Chat GPT.
Okay.
There's several of them out there now. And there's some more advanced ones too that can help you creating outlines and things like that. And
Right.
those are changing and evolving all the time. But
Right.
they're all useful for generating ideas. Don't use them to generate content. We can talk about that when we talk about writing tools, but generating ideas, they're very good at that. So,
Right. Right. And that's specifically what I want to point out is that, AI isn't necessarily something that you would want to say, okay, write my story, because there's going to be a lot of problems with it. But keep in mind that if you need it to help you spur some ideas or say, okay, I've gotten to this point in the story and now I'm stuck. I don't know where to go from here. Putting a prompt into AI might really help you. So
mhm.
great suggestions. Okay. And then I think my last suggestion is going to be like the OG way. And that is don't forget to talk to your friends, neighbors, relatives, bounce ideas off of
Mhm.
people. Because people might, we have so many varied expressions of experiences and perspectives. It's actually going to be very helpful for you to be able to say, I have this idea of this guy who does this, and your neighbor might go, I knew a guy like that. And then they might go down the road
Mhm.
a little bit, and you can go down that little road with them, and they might give you some kind of like idea that you had no idea about, or something that guy did maybe takes your plot in that direction. There's a lot of value in relationships, and I know as writers we're very introverted and we tend to live in our caves and not want to
Mhm.
go out and socialize, but there is something to be said for networking, and there is something to be said to be part of writers groups and
Mhm.
and critique groups and things like that. There's value in that.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
another plug for your local writers guild and writers groups. Please, don't be afraid
Yes.
to network and get out there and meet people, because you are not an all-knowing being, and you're going to lack information and lack knowledge in areas that would probably benefit you greatly if you would just reach out. So that's my
Mhm.
last tool in the brainstorming arena. So
Absolutely. And that's absolutely like when we do plot on the spot, one of the biggest components of it is the audience. You, as the audience, are coming up with ideas and we're throwing them in there. And the reason is, and so people often get done with those. And they're like, I don't have 70 friends I can get in a room with and explore ideas. I go, yeah, but you got five. You got 5 writer friends, right? Even if you get on Zoom and you just start bouncing ideas off each other, you can come up with a
Exactly.
plot really quickly. You can come up with a plot really quickly.
Really quickly.
So
Yeah. Yeah. So just don't be afraid to like have a lunch.
yeah,
buy
have a
some
lunch, ask.
buy some
Yeah.
drinks, like have a good time. Okay. So moving on to the next stage, which is going to be, I'm going to say either, I'm going to say, let's say writers and editors tools in terms of like the actual developing the manuscript or writing a manuscript. I'm going to start with Word, Microsoft Word. And the reason is because I need you all to understand that it is the standard word processing program. Like I love the idea of writing in Scrivener and in Plotter and in all these other programs. I mean, I think you can even write a book in Amazon right now. Like, don't they have like you can write it? Oh, it's not going to be friendly.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
But there are programs out there that will, write your book here and you can organize it. And while that's all great, if it generates anything outside of a doc or a docx, you are going to have formatting problems. And when you're going through the editing process with an editor and they're giving you comments and feedback and fixing, and then you throw that back into that program and then try to pull it back out again to give it to your editor, it is going to be a mess. I can't tell you how many times I find weird random spaces between periods and the indents are all jacked up, and there's always like paragraph marks that shouldn't be there in the middle of a sentence, and then there's always like it throws everything off. Fonts are bad. There's hidden there's even hidden spacing that happens where it's not even like embedded in as a paragraph mark or a regular space. It's just like these hidden little text boxes that come out of nowhere. All of that stuff is going to mess with the process in such a way that it will just generate more time and issues when it comes time to getting down the road farther. So please, for the love of all that's good and holy, when you are drafting a manuscript and you're into the editing process, you're into that, okay, this is my manuscript process and I need to go forward from this, beyond the creative process, but into the writing process, please use Word. Like, I give some allowances for Google Docs, but once you pull out of Google Docs the first time, don't go back, because all those formatting issues I just listed, that's where I found those, is from those Google Docs. So it is just a bad idea. And I don't know any other editor that's a professional editor that uses anything other than Microsoft Word. I don't know anybody. I haven't met anybody yet. So what about your experience?
So there is a rise of editors talking about other tools, but the problem right now is, well, not the problem. The issue right now is that Word is still the gold standard, and if you're going to submit traditionally at all, you are going to need to master Microsoft Word. And what the issues you're talking about are called legacy formatting. It comes in this hidden coding that comes from other programs. And so it's a computer programmer. If you're a software engineer, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're not a software engineer, all you need to know is that there is code behind everything that you write, and that causes it to appear on a screen in a certain way. And when you transfer between programs, you have what's called legacy formatting. And the only way to fix it entirely when you bring it into Word is do what's called nuking the document. And basically what I do at that point is I turn it into rich text format, which is only text, and then I reformat every bit of it. So you put something in bold, if you put something in italics, it's no longer in bold.
It's all gone.
It's no longer in italics. It's no longer centered. I have to redo the formatting of the entire document. Me as an editor, I'm going to charge you for that. So you're welcome to pay me to do that for you. That's not a great idea. Now, there are some programs that are improving that process. But I generally write in Scrivener, but as soon as I move to the editing process, I move to Word. And there's more than one reason for that, one of them being psychological. The only thing I do in Scrivener is write fiction. My brain knows I'm writing fiction when I'm in Scrivener. So I don't do anything else in there because I don't want my brain to get confused. But there are programs like Atticus that are coming along that are trying to integrate that writing and editing process, and it very much mirrors a similarity to Word. It is not as powerful yet, and there are glitches because it's still in a very early development stages. And there are other ways, like there's other places you can write your book. You can write your book in AutoCrit. You can write your book in Pro Writing Aid. You can write your work in any of these programs. But once you export it for the editing process, you need to export it into Word. And the only person who needs to be ever taking it out of Word and putting it back into Word if they want to is your editor, who knows how to fix those weird things if they happen. Because otherwise you're going to create problems down the road. And when you submit to an agent or a publisher, if you're going the traditional route, you need a Word document. Also, the cleanest document to start formatting with any program, InDesign, Vellum, Atticus, wherever, is a Word program.
It's a Word.
It's a Word program. So it's the cleanest, easiest form right now. Will that change? Quite possibly. When I started out, we were using WordPerfect. WordPerfect, I think, still exists, but I'm not even sure because I haven't used it in years. But that's what we started out with. So, of course, things are going to change. But at the moment still, Word is the gold standard as far as when you get to the editing process. Now, for the creative and the writing process, there are all kinds of other programs you can use. Just be sure that you can export them into a doc or docx format that can be used by your editor, whoever's looking at your work once it's done. Super important. Really, really important.
Yeah. So if you're like in the beta reader phase and you want to share a document through Google Docs or something, that's fine. And in fact, I encourage that. I mean, like, use those tools that are available, like Scrivener and I haven't seen Atticus yet, but that you said it, and now I want to go look at it. But things like that, like there are amazing tools out there, and like you said, Troy, everything's kind of updating all the time. Like people are always trying to come out with the next best thing, and that's great. That's the joy of our world. I mean, innovation is not something we want to squelch. So like go out there and search and find what tool best suits your process. But yeah, in terms of editing, if you're going to be an editor, you better have a Word subscription. You better have it on your computer, because like you said, Troy, if nobody's going to take you seriously, if you're editing in Google Docs, they're going to look at you and go, "What's wrong with you?" So just bear that in mind. In terms of also the reason I prefer Word and the way I like to use Word is I can build in those macros, and macros can be a whole other discussion. And honestly, I don't even completely understand them because I haven't fully fleshed this out to the point where I feel like I can even really talk on this topic. But YouTube is my friend. And when I'm like, how do I get this done? I can usually go to YouTube and find something where somebody has done a video about something that will flesh that out or develop that macro for me in Word. So there are things that you can do, processes you can create inside of Word to help you make the editing process better. And again, some of those tools are also very integratable with Word. So for example, you brought this up as Pro Writing Aid. I use Pro Writing Aid as one of my programs to help edit my stuff. I pay for a subscription for that so I can have the pro version, and then I have it integrated into my Word. So when I'm done with my editing process and my read, I will actually throw it into Pro Writing Aid and have Pro Writing Aid do an analysis of the document. I do this for every children's book author that I have because I also want to know their Fleshman or their Flesch, what is that, Flesch Kincaid reading scale?
Yeah.
Like I want to know, I want to make
grade scale.
Right. So I want to make sure that they're hitting all those marks for the target, age that they're shooting for, things like that. So, I mean, there's a reason that Pro Writing Aid is awesome. The free version is actually pretty dang powerful too. It doesn't, in all honesty, I don't even notice the difference between the pro version and the free version. Like I don't even know what tools I'm accessing in the pro version that I couldn't get in the free version, except that it just integrates nicely and seamlessly because it's all in my stuff. Do you have any experience with Pro Writing Aid? Do you like it?
Yeah, I like Pro Writing Aid. I also like I will take manuscripts and plug them into AutoCrit to get certain
Oh yeah.
analysis because it compares it to books of your genre.
Ah,
And
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
part of that advantage is to say, we always say things like show don't tell. Well, but that also partially depends upon your genre. If you're writing
Right.
literary fiction, there's some times when you're going to do more telling than showing. It's not an action flick like John Wick. It's a very beautiful, poetic, whatever type thing you're writing, right? And so that balance is different. If you're editing a memoir, things are different than they are if you're editing a
Right.
fiction manuscript. So it allows you to make comparisons between those manuscripts and what the standard is for that genre, to say, okay, these would be repeated words we'd want to eliminate in a mystery or thriller, but in a memoir, they're fine. It's fine to leave
They're
those things.
fine.
So
Right.
it's a really powerful tool as well. Again, just be sure you're using it to analyze your stuff and make changes, but be sure that those changes end up in Word at some point.
Yeah.
One of
Like
those things
it's
to do.
almost like you want to do them side by side.
Yep.
But
Or
yeah.
you can, you can export from, there's ways that you can export from AutoCrit as a docx and then do a document comparison so that you can actually create track
Clean it
changes.
out. Yeah.
That is advanced stuff. However, the thing I will say about macros and Pro Writing Aid is you as a writer can use those. Do not use them in the drafting process, please.
Right.
That is a whole other topic as well about drafting
Right.
quickly, but we just won't go down that road because I will have a TED talk right here and it will derail us completely. But when you're in the revision process, you can use Pro Writing Aid. You can use these other tools to make your manuscript as clean as possible by the time you hand it to your editor. If you want to spend less money on editing, do more work yourself. Now, there's some things
Right.
you can't do. Some things you are not going to see because it's your manuscript. But there are ways for you to do things to clean up your copy, clean up your manuscript, and make it better by using the tools that you have available. You can use them. I've given some of my clients the macros that goes through and highlights every single to be verb in your entire manuscript. Is that
Wow.
annoying? Yep, if you used
Yes.
a lot of passive voice, that's annoying, but does it make you look at every sentence in the manuscript? Also, yes. So, I mean, this is one of those things that, if you really want to take some of your writing game to the next level and do some of your revision on your own, there are those macros that are available that will help writers as well. So don't be afraid. You're like, I'm just a writer, I'm not an editor, so I don't need to use some of these advanced features. Nah, use them and learn to make your own copy better in the revision process, for sure.
Right.
But yeah, Pro
Right. I
Writing
mean,
Aid is golden. And the difference between the Pro and the free, in my understanding, is that the Pro, you can integrate things like Chicago Manual of Style, or you can switch it to the
I
AP.
was gonna,
You can switch it to
yeah.
AP. You can do things like that you can't do with, certain editors are better at certain, as far as online editors,
Styles.
editing tools
Yeah.
are better at certain styles. Some follow Chicago, some follow AP. And so if you are doing student work, you need to change it to AP because that's what your professor is going to expect. And it is different than Chicago. So there's tools that can help you as a writer do those things, even if you don't understand exactly what all of those things mean. Obviously,
Right.
a professional editor will take that to another level, but those tools can be helpful as a place to start.
Yeah, and that's it. That was the thing I was going to say, is that I've integrated the Chicago Manual of Style. That's my style book that I kind of base my stuff on. And then it's interesting because I have that subscription, and it integrates right into Pro Writing Aid. So those rules will transfer over. A lot of times, depending on the writing, like you said, and this is the reason why AI is a tool and not a replacement. But I'm going to plug this again, is that I use AI to help me, but there are many times where, and we talked about this before, how AI will kind of generalize something, or it might just really kind of make something more generic when the voice of the author is trying to say something a certain way, and they're using this certain inflection, or I don't know how else to explain it, but you can hear the writer's voice through the words that they're typing on the page, and AI will often erase that. And so that's why a professional editor who, one, recognizes the nuances of writer's voice and two, recognizes what would be a grammar rule as opposed to an AI trying to tighten up somebody's language. So you want to make sure that you're with somebody that can say yes and no to the AI's prompts, because you don't want somebody to just blank and say yes to all those AI prompts. It's going to erase your author voice from that manuscript. So, yeah. I mean, Grammarly is notorious for it.
Yeah, it's terrible at dialogue is one thing that AI is terrible about. The new Grammarly has a new AI integration, which is fantastic for nonfiction, sort of. But you still need at times to say no. But it's terrible at dialogue. It is terrible at taking some of the character out of your story. So you just need to be careful with those things. Learn to say no. Also, AI makes a great proofreader,
right?
To tell you where a comma goes, or to tell you where something like that, But it does not make a good editor, and there's a big difference between those two things. And people get that confused. They're like, "Well, I had somebody proofread my book," and I'm like, "Okay." And then I look at their book, and I'm like, "Well, but this part doesn't need to be proofread; it needs to be revised." And that doesn't make any. So you can't do that. So.
Right.
Yeah. Just know those differences for sure.
That was one of the tools that I was going to mention, is that I actually do use Grammarly, but that is in my proofreading process. That's like after I've already revised, after I've already copy edited, which is that creating those lines and those sentences and syntax that needs to help that manuscript flow off the brain easily. Eliminating those sticky sentences, making things feel varied in your sentence lengths and everything. All of that's already done. And then I will turn on Grammarly and see where those extra spaces are, where the commas are missing, if I've got a double word, things like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, you can automate a lot of that process, that last part of the proofing process, using tools. That's the last part of the process.
That's the last,
It's you're not going to, don't proofread chapters you might delete. It's a waste of time.
Right.
Unless you just want to learn Grammarly rules for some reason. You want to learn grammar rules for some reason? Cool. But most of us had enough of that in high school. We're not about grammar rules now. We're about the flow of the story and the voice of the story and making it work. So,
except that I'm going to plug this. This is one of my favorite books. Grammar Diagram.
Oh, yes.
I had to pull this bad boy out the other day. This is like one of my college books. It was funny. It's kind of like, I'm not the best grammarian. I'm going to admit that is one of my weak points. You put me side by side to another, grammar Nazi, and she or he is probably going to win the contest. I will probably defer to whatever they come up with. But that aside, I do recognize that it is a strong point when it comes to just the average Joe. Like, I have a little bit more grammar chops than the normal, but it's not my superpower. That being said, this book, it was funny. I was like, the other day I had a client that said, Stacey, and this is getting really technical, but he's like, isn't this supposed to be an R instead of an is in this sentence? And I was like, no. And the reason is because when you break it down to its core, the subject of the sentence is actually singular. So it is, you know. And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, okay, each is, you would say each is, you wouldn't say each are. And he's like, oh, yeah, that doesn't sound right. I'm like, yeah, so that's why. And I literally went down the rabbit hole and started sentence diagramming this overly complicated sentence that he created and crafted. And when I diagrammed it, it was this behemoth mess, and I was literally my brain was melting at the end of it. And I sent him the screenshot of it. I said, here, this is what your sentence looks like in a diagram. And you could say it so much easier by just saying, I thank God daily that you are each a blessing, or that each of you is a blessing, or I thank God no, it ended up being even simpler than that. I said, I thank God each day for, or I daily thank God for each of you, or something like that. It was like this really,
Yeah.
but it was this before, it was, there is not one day that I didn't thank God for, and I'm like, there's double negatives and there was all this stuff. And I was like, we're done. And he ended the sentence with the word is. And I was like, okay.
Oh no.
So yeah. So I was like, that's just all wrong. But it was in the proofreading. It was like, we've already published, actually. This is one of the things that when he got his proof, he was just going through the manuscript or the book to make sure that there were no funky things going on. And that sentence stuck out to him. Well, I wasn't his editor. It was, he'd hired another editor, and he says, I think this sentence is wrong. And that's when I went back to him and I was like, well, actually, she's right, but that sentence should have been revised. Like, it should have been like this.
For sure. Yeah, we had a thing at a conference where we actually diagrammed, a group of editors actually diagrammed a bunch of sentences for people and showed people how it works. Kind of a refresher from high school with a few advanced things thrown in. But the truth is, like, you as an author most of the time should not do that, because
it'll stop you from writing.
Yeah, and it'll drive you crazy. And it's not you. It's a very technical issue that's like, and a lot of times you can just rewrite the sentence and get rid of that problem without having to go down and diagram a full-on sentence and do all the technical stuff.
It's so funny.
But it's not bad to understand the structure behind all of it. But it's like some of the things that I study, because of who I am and the story structure things that I study, like I study semiotics, which is the science of signs. Do you need to study that as an author? No. Probably not. Is it really fun and interesting? Yes. But to me, right? But that is not going to necessarily be a step that makes your writing better. So I'd say be careful with tools, because the other thing that happens with writers is they end up developing this intricate process that involves all of these tools. And when they get down to the end of it, they're spending so much time messing with the tools that they're not actually spending the time writing. So I've developed a very simple process. You can imitate my process if you want, because you're not going to, because you're going to eventually make your own process. But I would just tell you to simplify it as much as possible, because making it complicated is only going to put roadblocks in the way of your writing, rather than smoothing the writing process. Because the whole goal of any tool should be to help you finish your first draft. If that's not the goal of the tool that you're using in the writing process, then you shouldn't be using it. In the editing process, the goal of every tool is to make your manuscript the best that it can be. If you use 4 different grammar checkers on your manuscript, you're going to get 4 different answers as to what's right and what's wrong. And you're going to have to make decisions about it. So limit those tools and then pass it on to a professional editor and let them finish it off for you. That's the answer. It's the simplest answer there is. So, yeah.
Exactly. And, that's what I was going to point out too, is like my Grammarly and Pro Writing Aid, they contradict each other all the time. So it's like you said, you have to just eliminate that brain block from your process. If you're a writer and you're in the writing process, and this is something I'm learning myself as a professional editor. This is probably one of the most difficult things I've ever done, is to sit down and actually write out a chapter and not try to edit that in that creative process. And it is devastatingly stunting when I get hung up on a sentence or a word that I believe is not fully conveying what I'm trying to say, instead of just getting that scene out of me. So really, it's just better if you just don't get so hung up on that process and just let yourself go through this in steps and stages. Do not edit as you go. You will spend way too much time creating your first draft, and there are immense problems that you create for yourself by taking too long to write a draft. Huge problems. And you will eventually understand them if you write long enough, but you've got to just understand that they exist at this point and just avoid that process altogether. It really is going to help you out a lot. You'll avoid writer's block. There's all kinds of things that will help you with. So that first draft, let's just talk about that for just a second, because I was going to say that the other tool in this toolbox that we're creating for the writing and editing process is going to be that, again, human, that editor.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not just plugging this because I'm an editor and I like working with authors and this is my business. I'm actually plugging this because as an editor who is writing, I know I'm going to need an editor. And it can't be me.
Mm-hmm.
The editor can't be me. I'm too close. So just be mindful of the fact that we're like, this all leads to that point. But what I was going to say is that your first draft, please also don't give that draft to the editor.
Oh, no, don't give that draft to the editor. There's a certain amount of, and we should probably do a whole episode on this, on revision and self-editing. And what I mean by self-editing is not that you edit your book yourself before you publish it and then you just send it straight and hit publish or whatever you're going to do.
Right.
That's a really poor decision. However, it is also an equally poor decision to hand an editor your rough draft that you have not revised. Part of the reason for that is that you're going to have mistakes that you can catch and that you can clean up. And if I, as an editor, have to clean up those things for you, I will happily do that at a pretty high rate of pay. So you don't want to pay me to do that when it's something that you can do yourself. So you need to go through and read and revise your first draft. But the key is to get that first draft done and then go back and read and revise it. Now, and there are tools that you can use along that process, and we've talked about a lot of them. ProWriting 8 integrated with Word, things like that. Things like AutoCrit that talk about, there's another great one that's called Pictionary that helps you with the pacing of your story and helps you understand it.
Cool.
I pull every story apart and I put it into Plotter and I double check it with a template and make sure that the pacing is correct, that the scenes all belong, that the characters make sense. There's not broken things in there. I do that with every single manuscript. So you can use these tools that we're talking about to break that manuscript apart and to really analyze it when you're done before you send it to an editor. But the key is to get it written first. But then there's all kinds of tools available to you to make sure that when you do send a draft to an editor, it's as clean as you can get it right now. Me as an editor, I have to send my manuscript to somebody else to edit because I become word blind and I see things that aren't really there. And I see explanations that aren't really there. And there's sentences that don't make sense to anybody else, but they make perfect sense to me because I wrote them. So I understand exactly what I meant. And you need to get somebody else's eyes on those things that is not you, that can tell you, that can ask you, hey, what did you mean by this? And you have to stop and explain it to them. So that human element never goes away, but you as the human are the gatekeeper before you send it to your editor. You really need to do some revision at that point. Right.
Exactly. So yeah, and like you said, we could do a whole video on that. So maybe we will. Yeah, just keep in mind, and I'm going to keep saying this, AI is a tool. So don't use it as a replacement. But I've had some authors come to me and say, well, I would like you to edit my book. And I tell them, okay, I'm going to do it for this price. And I'm not expensive, just so we're clear. I've been told multiple times by other editing professionals that I charge way too little and that I'm shorting myself, but I digress. The reason I bring that up is because I've been told that they can't afford that by some, because, it's difficult sometimes to fork over that kind of money I'm trying to figure out, okay, what's my word count going to be? Because I'm going to give this to an editor and this is how much I'm going to have to pay. I get it. But in that process, I have had to tell multiple authors at times, well, if you're not willing to pay that, you're going to have to do it yourself. And the only thing available to you is going to be these tools that we've listed to you. And like we've said, they're flawed. So they're not going to tell you your pacing is so bad in this chapter that you need to revamp it. They're not going to, those tools are not going to tell you that your word count is too high for the genre. They're not going to tell you that the market is shifting and you should probably think about tapping into this other aspect of your story so that you can cross audiences. They're not going to be able to do that. So you need to understand that if you're going to choose to go the route that Troy is talking about, whereas you're just going to do it yourself and just throw it out there into publishing world, you take a huge risk at getting poor reviews and missing the market altogether. So I have a client right now that is literally, she's missing the entire market. Like her book, you can't even type her name and the title of her book in the search bar and find her book. That's how bad the algorithm and her world is mismatched. So you really, really do benefit from an editor who understands the world in which you are writing and what you're trying to accomplish with your book. So please use the tool of an editor that is a professional in the industry. They're not just a grammar Nazi. That's not what the point is.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we're going to move into the next and the final, and I'm going to just go ahead and say, let's talk to the self-publisher here for a second. Well, I mean, I'll touch on the indie, or not the indie, but the indie or the trad publish group here, that if we have anybody that's hanging on this long, if you are going that route, the tools to you are going to be agents and basically editors that you're going to pitch your stuff to. You might want to find some editor that you can employ, or pre-agent that you can employ to help you write a query or to put together a book proposal. Those professionals are essential when it comes to accessing that track of publishing. So keep that in mind, that putting together a really well put together book proposal is going to be worth every penny. So I have a few people that I recommend in particular, depending on your direction, but it needs to be somebody that's focused on your genre. So be very aware of who you're hiring. It can't just be anybody that you just found on the internet. They need to have like the connections. And we've talked about this with agents. It's very important that those connections are already established before you get started. And then that's all I have to say about trad publishing and that. Do you have anything else that you want to say as far as tools there?
No, other than, especially if you're going the trad route, you're going to want to present as clean of a draft as you possibly can. And I've just been going through this with a client, and it's almost a nightmare, because sometimes the standards will change depending on which editor you're talking to or what's happening at that particular moment. So just understand that that's a very complicated route to go to, and you're going to have to jump through a lot of hoops to do it. And so having the cleanest manuscript you can to start off with is really, really important.
Right.
Really important.
Right. If a publisher sees that your manuscript's going to take a lot of work, I mean, if developmentally, it's not even developmentally there, they don't want to invest the time.
Yeah, they're not.
Yeah. So
that'll kill your chances right away.
Right.
Kill your chances right away.
Exactly. So we're going to put that out there. Now, if you're going to go the self-publishing route, there's a whole lot of tools that you can use. If you're going to do this yourself, okay. First of all, this is one of those things that, I mean, my course, it's tailored for this, to walk you through all these very intricate steps. And believe you me, there are people out there, and I've had my assistant recently go into that rabbit hole and to try to investigate and see what other courses are out there. And she came back to me and said, nobody is as comprehensive as you are. And I was blown away by that, because I know that there are gaps in my course that I wish I could go down and explain more to. But for the most part, when you go out there, the market is going to be, you can publish on Amazon, how to publish on Amazon. And they'll break it down into 4 steps. And you're like, there's way more than that. Or how to generate keywords and category, or how to generate keywords, and I recommend Publisher Rocket for that. But that's just one of the intricate little steps in publishing. How to design a book cover, You know, like you can go in and you can get a ready-made book cover from 100 Covers or Fiverr or whatever. Please don't. I'm just going to say that right now. Please don't. But you can. Those are tools available to you. Will they generate a cover? Yeah. Will it be the best cover you could possibly get? No. But if you're out there to just if you're out there to just get a cover, then okay, by all means, just go get a cover. Ready-made covers are not great, but they're out there. There are tools out there. Having AI create some images for your cover is even, I mean, you can do that, but AI is not perfect in the imaging world either. And right now there's copyright issues that are going on. So just do homework, but but yeah, one of my favorite tools though for formatting, I mean, and I have two, my favorite two. My first tool that I recommend is Vellum. It's worth every penny. I invested in, I switched over from an HP to Mac, people, and you guys got to understand why that is like telling me to move to another country and learn to speak another language. It was hard for me to do that, but I did it because I wanted this program. So Vellum has helped me and many of my clients produce wonderful, beautiful books. They do a good job. They're constantly being updated. They only work, I mean, there's ways to make HP somehow work with it, but it's glitchy. It doesn't work. And the Vellum developers have already said point blank, they will never write the language for the other system. They're only going to stick with the Apple iOS. So, and keep in mind, that's only on the Mac or the MacBook. It's not for the iPad. So you're not going to get off easy by getting an iPad and thinking you can format your book there. You're not going to be able to. So, just keep that in mind. But I do really, really love it. And it's one of the reasons why I will not go back to an HP. And it's because of that program. My second tool, I mean, I know before we get off this topic, you like Vellum too, right?
Yeah, I like Vellum a lot. And for probably 90% of book formatting that I do, Vellum is the only tool that I need. I will mention another one, which I mentioned already earlier, is Atticus has some formatting capabilities that are actually pretty nice. Of the things in Atticus's toolbox that are the most developed, the formatting aspect is, and it is available for PC. So if you're a PC user and you're like, I'm not going to switch to Mac and I'm not going to spend the money on Vellum, okay, there are alternatives for you.
Right.
Atticus is, in my mind, is not quite Vellum yet, but it is for most fiction books. It has enough options that you can do a fairly good job of formatting with Atticus, and you're not missing a whole lot.
Right.
But if you really, the Cadillac of formatting programs right now is still Vellum. And that's the Cadillac and the best one. So if you're an Apple person, fantastic. If you're not, there are alternatives, and Atticus is probably the best of those alternatives at the moment of this podcast. So that could change tomorrow, but right now, that's what it is.
Well, you said Cadillac of programs. I'm going to talk about the Pinto. Does everybody remember the Ford Pinto? The Ford Pinto of the tools that some people are going to swear by is Amazon's formatting tool. I hate it. I don't know, that might be me, but if you're desperate, fine. You can put your book in there. Will it look great? No. In fact, I can usually pinpoint an Amazon formatted book without even going to page 3. Like, I know right off the bat. It doesn't look great. So, what do you think?
I don't recommend that at all. Draft to Digital has a pretty good online formatting tool that is very basic. Right. Some of the advanced things that you can do with Vellum, you cannot do with the Draft to Digital tool. However, if you're looking to make a fairly clean manuscript from a Word doc, and it'll translate it into an EPUB and Mobi, Draft to Digital will create a very good basic formatting that is much better than the one offered by Amazon.
Right.
Now, that's again, this is my opinion and Stacey's opinion. Your mileage may vary. You may have great luck with the Amazon formatter. I never have. And so I haven't even tried it in a very, very long time, because there's too many other tools out there that are worthwhile. And again, if you really want to get a decent format and you don't use the drafted digital format, and because there are some tools that they have that they're still pretty basic, but it can make some parts of the formatting process a little easier for you.
And I really do like drafted digital as a company. I think they're doing really great things, and they're one of those distribution platforms that I personally have like converted to. I think I moved over to drafted digital as an option 3 or 4 years ago for distribution on the digital books. And I actually still, hands down, their interface with their website is so much more friendly, and their customer service to date is still hands down the best.
Amazing.
You can still call them and talk to a human, and they are very friendly and very helpful and very motivated to make you happy. So that is, in today's world right now with publishing, that is such a refreshing place to be.
Well, yeah, I know several people on the drafted digital team, and they are awesome. First of all, it's just people. In fact, one of them will be at the Idaho Writers Conference coming up.
Yay!
Nick Thacker does a lot of work with drafted digital, and he's just, besides just being an amazing human being, he's a part of that team for the same reason like that I'm a part of the teams I'm a part of, is because I really genuinely want to help writers. And so their team really genuinely wants to make the experience better for you. They want you to make money. They want you to get your books distributed as widely as possible. And they will do anything in their power they can do to help you do that the very best that they can. And it really is, for me, drafted digital is one of the tools, especially for digital distribution, that is just, I use it all the time. I use other ones for physical book distribution. That's a whole other story. But drafted digital for digital. For digital.
Yeah, I agree. I'm on that same page too. I mean, that's one of those that I'm like, and I watch them for the print. Like, I'm watching them. Like, the more and more that they get into that, the more and more that becomes profitable for them. I'm sure they'll branch out more and have more options. But yeah, it's one of those things I'm keeping my eyeballs on, because as far as like the company, they're really kind of like prestigious in my opinion.
Their print distribution is actually excellent. The only issue that you run into print distribution, the biggest issue that you run into is getting your books into bookstores, which for me, frankly, outside of my local independent bookstores, I don't care about getting my books into bookstores. There's a lot of reasons for that. But I don't. If it happens, great. If it doesn't happen, I really don't make a lot of money from that avenue, and I can put a tremendous amount of effort into it. So I'm not going to put that effort necessarily into that. But so drafted digital, that's the only thing, is if you want to get wide distribution to bookstores, it is possible through drafted digital. You need to be very careful about how you follow that process. That's probably a whole other topic by itself as well. And it's the same thing with some other companies that do some distribution for you. Is to get your books into bookstores, there's specific steps you must follow. You must have your own ISBNs, which we would recommend anyway, and you must set your titles up a certain way in their platform. But the thing you can't control through drafted digital is the percentage of discount that bookstores get and whether they can return your books or not. You can't control those two things through drafted digital yet, and some bookstores find that really, really important when they're ordering books. So that's just a heads up. That's a whole other topic, because we can talk about the hidden middleman and that print version through Ingram and all the rip-off happening to authors, which is one of the reasons I don't care if my books are in bookstores. But
it's one of those things where like I said, it's one of those things that a lot of my authors tend to care about. And like I said, in my course I explain how to do this, but it involves backdoors that again, the publishing process is full of all these little things, and unless you're doing it all the time, you miss a lot of the information. So there are tools out there, like we're saying, in terms of publishing goes, but but realize if you go with one tool or even 3 tools, you might be missing 6 other tools that you need to make sure that your book does its level best. So I'm going to open up the wormhole, so to speak, on this one, because there are so many things out there that even I use and you use in terms of publishing. So I'm gonna restrict this video specifically to writing and to editing, because that publishing world, that is a whole different ball of wax. But just keep in mind that if you're on the video and then you're watching it this far, that that the wormhole is this: Google is going to take you down a vast plane of exploration and wonder, and and some of it's going to be wrong, and some of it's going to be innovative and new and exciting and stuff that maybe I haven't even discovered but yet. But bear in mind that the fastest, best way, if you're going to self-publish your book right now, is to get with a coach that can lead you down that path. And I know they're out there. I'm one of them. I know, Troy, you've done this. You've coached clients through that process. So just bear in mind that it's best if you find somebody that knows how to get through those steps as efficiently and as cleanly as possible, so that your book can get to where it needs to be and you can move into that next phase, which is marketing and that whole business mindset. So we're not going to touch that today either, but just some of those last minute tools, like tools that, I mean, really kind of like, I just find handy that for the writing process, that I don't necessarily like, they're not really like something that are proprietary or that something that you have to buy or subscribe to, but that I have around the house, have around the desk. They include my style guide. I create a style guide so that I can stay consistent. That means making sure that, like, I'm, if I'm going to have an ellipses, that's the 3 dots and not 4. And if I'm not going to have the space before and after, and I'm going to have the space only after, like those kinds of little details, those are in my style guide. And so I'm consistent, and it prevents me from having these multiple variations that I might question, and certain AI might catch and other AI might say that's the way it's supposed to be. So, just bear in mind that a style guide as an author is great because it helps you stay consistent with spellings of names, like on your fiction characters, making sure, like, for example, like if you have a character sheet that's dialed in, and your character has red eyes or red hair and blue eyes, and mid manuscript you're writing about her beautiful green eyes, a style guide will help you keep that stuff straight. So that's one of my favorite tools to have. I know you have one, Troy. I know you use style guides.
Well, and I have a series Bible for every series, and I keep those in Plotter. Actually, in the character sheets in Plotter, and then it's very digitally accessible very quickly, and that's a part of one of these times I'll just go through and describe my entire process. And but I keep it there because it's digitally available, and it's available throughout the entire series. So if I bring the character from book 1 back in book 4, I have a consistent description, consistent name, consistent spelling of the name, all that kind of stuff. Also, when you hand a style guide to your editor, then they can understand how you want punctuation and stuff to be, so they can override the AI. Sometimes if you have a good editor and you don't have a style guide, they will create one for you on your first book that you do with them. And then from that point forward, you have a style guide that you can now refer to and use, so you get things right as often as possible before you hand it over. So style guide is super important. Super important.
Yeah. Another thing that's not, something you subscribe to or anything is, I really, really like my AirPods, and, I like them. I switched over, and I love them, and I use them for noise canceling. When I'm trying to evoke a certain emotion or tone from myself, I will listen to a certain music or something that will help me, be inspired. Or or sometimes it's just to drown everything else out. Recently, I also invested in some of these. These are loops. I don't know if you guys have seen these, but I wasn't going to plug this, but these guys don't pay me, by the way. Like, I'm not being paid by Loop, but loops are earplugs. These ones specifically are, I think these are the highest noise canceling that you can buy, but they literally, like, in my world, all I hear is me breathing. Like and sometimes I need no sound. Like I have to have zero sound. And sometimes these are valuable. Like sometimes you need to find tools that will help you focus. And so that's one of them. And then I love my books. But for the writer, I would say I just recommended this book to a client the other day. He says, "Do you recommend a grammar book?" And I said, "Yeah, I have a great grammar book for writers, and this is it, grammar." I'm not going to say it out loud, but yeah, it's great. And the reason I like it is because it's quick, it's fast, it's easy, and it's just broken down in this very, very simple way that you don't have to have my Chicago manual style that's like that. You can quickly, have a reference. So, have your little reference books. Fight Right. I have some others that I like. I love Seth Godin, but he's my business guy. I use him for business. Story Genius, Story Grid. You have one too, don't you? Storymaker, no, Storymaker's the conference. Didn't you just go to something recently was it Story Grid?
Well, no. So I'm actually, a quick plug here. If you're a plotter user, we just started a book club. They're full right now, but our first book that we're tackling is Story Genius.
Story Genius. Yeah, I have that book.
You'll likely get a chance to talk to Lisa Crone if you're a part of that particular cohort. So towards the end of it. But anyway, so books like that are really excellent even for me to revisit, even after all the stuff I've written, to remember the core elements of story and how I should be working to create them. And like I saw some great stuff. I'm always immersed in something relating to writing craft that I'm learning about. Just did a story analysis of John Wick the other day to talk about how you introduce your protagonist and your antagonist to give the reader the correct feeling about them, because John Wick is actually flipped in one part of it. Compared to what's normally done at the very beginning. That's a whole story analysis we can go through another time. And that one's really fun too, because you see how they flip the script around a little bit that makes John Wick, instead of making the antagonist seem like the most dangerous person, John Wick seems like the most dangerous person, and the antagonist is terrified of the protagonist. And that creates a whole different story dynamic. There's some dangers involved in that, but there's also some real rewards if you can pull it off really well, as you can see by the John Wick franchise. So, there's some cool tricks like that you learn about the craft, and I'm constantly studying that. And so I would tell you, if you're not reading a craft book, if you're not reading something about writing and how to write and how to improve your writing, or if you're not taking courses, which I'm taking two of right now, then you're probably missing out on some opportunities to just become a better writer as you go along the way, because you're never going to arrive at this plateau where you don't have anything to learn. At least I haven't arrived there yet. I don't know anybody who has. But, hey,
well,
cool if anyone who, congratulations and all that stuff. But
if you have, I've never met anyone that's willing to say that. And then I guess my last tool, and I hate to plug them, but I do subscribe to Audible, mostly because I don't have the time to read for pleasure in a physical format. Like I love paper. I have books to prove it. Like, this is just what I'm allowed to have down here in my downstairs office. I have more, but it's one of those things where I don't have that ability, and I love fiction. The fiction is what pulled me into this industry in the first place. I love fiction, and so one of the things that you should constantly be doing is reading, and like I said, I immerse myself in audiobooks. So when I'm in the car driving my foster sons around, or if I'm like out, doing some shopping or whatever, I can immerse myself in the written word so that I can feel what is out there, and ways that I can use literary devices to help my clients, and myself, ultimately, but just so that I can be a better editor. It's better for me to make sure that I'm staying immersed in those genres that I love. And so, it's always a good idea to always be reading for pleasure as well. So yes, immerse yourself in craft books, immerse yourself in learning constantly, and work on improving, but also turn off all those parts of you that would be analyzing and breaking something down, and really kind of just dive into story. I highly recommend
and read
that.
for fun.
And read for fun.
Yeah.
And read for fun.
And I'm going to throw one more tool.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
That I'm going to recommend. Besides reading, one thing I is I have an e-ink tablet called a Remarkable. If you've seen these, Amazon has one called the Scribe. I don't recommend it. Of the ones I've tested, I definitely recommend the Remarkable. But the reason is it's a tablet where you can read things. You can still mark on the tablet as if you were marking on a paper book, but you don't have as many paper books laying around. That's not always, I do still love paper books, but there are some advantages to having it digitally,
right?
And being able to take notes on it and that type of thing. The other thing about a Remarkable is it allows you to concentrate very well, much better than an iPad or something like that, because it doesn't have a browser and no email features. You cannot check your email.
Nice.
You cannot go on the internet. The only thing that it connects to Wi-Fi to is to sync between your devices so you can transfer files back and forth. But it's distraction free. So
Nice.
to me, that is worth the price of admission all by itself, is that I don't have a browser. I don't have the ability to lose my concentration and go somewhere else. So it's a tool I highly recommend that you have as an author, for if anything more than just taking notes or writing on it at some point when you aren't connected, but you're also not distracted. So super powerful tool, and yeah, I just wouldn't be without it. It's really good. Works really well.
I love that. Yeah. I was going to say, I would say I had an iPad. I was thinking about mentioning that as a tool because I do like taking that with me, but I will admit that while you were at the last conference and you had your Remarkable, and I was watching you take notes, and I remember thinking to myself, I wonder what would happen if he just left that. I could swap it from him.
I'm telling you, it is, a friend of mine had one and I was never going to buy one. And then I went out and we were doing something for Idaho Writers Guild with her, and she had hers with her, and I used it for a day, and then I ordered one on my phone before I went home. That's how quick the transformation was. It really is useful at times to just be disconnected. Just be disconnected, not have a connection, and read and study. And even just read for pleasure. But the ability to read and study and take notes, on a plane, it's an invaluable tool. It's absolutely worth it. There's so many different things, so many different uses for it. So it's a fantastic tool. Again, this is not a necessary tool for authors. You're not going to die.
No, these are like our
but
fun
these
ones,
are like fun tools that also, though, they help you as a writer stay focused, and that's really the most important thing. Well, one of the most important things is your focus.
Right. And we've talked about dictation software in the past before. Dragon was one of my favorites, and yours, I think. Is Dragon still your favorite?
I don't use Dragon because they haven't updated the Mac version. But now what I'm using, and this is another great quick little tip, for dictation, I use an AI program. There's a couple different ones. There's Otter AI, and there's one other one as well, so that you don't have to train yourself to say period, next line, enter, next paragraph. You don't have to do that. The AI does that for you. If you pause, it creates another paragraph. Now there's a lot of editing you still have to do when you're done, but it is very worthwhile. Because it adds a lot of that punctuation and a lot of those line breaks and stuff like that automatically without you having to say line break.
And it's called Otter?
So you can just literally dictate your story. Yeah, there's Otter AI, and there's one other one that a client of mine was using. I can't remember the name of it. There's a few different ones out there now that are AI dictation software. but they are extremely worthwhile. Because you can get your story out even faster because you don't have to train yourself for those things that you have to train Dragon for, and eventually it gets trained on your voice, and it detects what you're saying, how you're saying it, all that kind of stuff, and can add your punctuation and things like that in automatically. So they're really useful because it gets trained to you rather than you having to train it like you do with Dragon. Dragon sometimes takes some significant time to train.
Right.
So there's other dictation options out there, and I would definitely explore those. If you're looking at dictation as a way to get words down faster, or if you're just getting older and your hands don't work as well anymore.
Right.
Fortunately, I'm a very fast typist, but there's still times when dictation works really well for me. You can dictate parts of your novel on your phone while you're running around if you want to do that type of thing.
Yeah, like,
yeah,
in the middle of the night, you have a wild idea come to you and you need to get it out.
It's a great idea. And another part of that is when you mentioned AirPods, is if you're dictating using AirPods or some other kind of headphones, then it blocks out that outside noise that might come in and interfere with your recording, even if you're in a public spot or somewhere where you're trying to do something else. So again, something like that is highly recommended. You don't have to use AirPods by Apple, commercial here. I don't get paid by them. But there's other headphones as well that do similar things. And they're useful for exactly the same reasons. Is what we're talking about is just writer productivity and tools that make you better and make you faster, and that's one of them.
Right.
And that's another thing we'll be talking about at the Idaho Writers Conference, to just add another commercial for that. We're having a couple of pretty lengthy discussions about dictation and how to make that work and how that works for you and how it can really add up over time. So.
Yeah, and I'm gonna plug the Idaho Writers Guild conference as well here, because I want to say that specifically with this conference, which is nice, it is not one of those conferences you go to where you're going to just learn about these published books that are out there and you feel like it's an unattainable goal. The focus of the Idaho Writers Guild is specifically to cater to those everyday authors that are trying to do either self or trad publishing, and just kind of get you in the right lane and get you networking and rubbing shoulders with the right people so that you can know and learn about the industry and know how to go forward, so that you're not just guessing and then stumbling over rocks as you leave the conference and not know what to do. Like, we really the focus is to try to really help everybody who is out there writing and create a community for you to give you the right tools to go forward.
Yeah. We want you to be able to do this for life, essentially.
Right.
And do it forever. Because I don't ever plan on retiring, and I've got to have a plan in order to do that. And so if you're like me, you need a plan too. And that's what this conference is about teaching you how to develop that plan for yourself. Not there to teach you Troy's plan or anybody else's plan. Instead, we're trying to help you find ways to develop your own plan. So super useful. The workshop we're doing the day before with Becca Simon, Claire Taylor is extremely valuable.
I'm so excited about that one. I'm so excited about that.
They've got some new material and it's pretty incredible. And Claire will have a new book. I don't think it'll be out by then, but the Kickstarter is active, called Sustain Your Author Career. She has her original one that's called Reclaim Your Author Career.
Reclaim Your Author Career.
It's a fantastic book tool.
I'm going to plug her.
And
I'm going to plug her right here. This is her book.
Now her Kickstarter is live with the one that says Sustain Your Author Career. And in this one, instead of talking about how to get your author career back on track, we're going to talk about how to do this forever. And it's a super important topic. It's super close to me because of my life and how I've chosen to live it. And I know it's super close to the people that are teaching and that many of the people that are attending the conference as well. So you're going to find some like-minded people. So it's going to be amazing.
Okay. Yeah, it's amazing. It's going to be April 11th and 12th. 12th and 13th. This class is 12th and 13th? 11th.
11th. That class is the 11th and 12th and 13th is the conference.
Right. And you can find that information on the Idaho Writer Guild, or IdahoWritersGuild.org website. And then I will also put it in the description below. But yeah. So if you guys have any questions or you want us to cover a specific topic, we're open to that. In fact, I've got a topic right now that we're working on for one of my dear friends that actually reached out to me about pseudonyms and about pen names. And I thought, is that something that people are interested in? And turns out, yes, it is. People are looking for guidance in that. So that's something that we'll probably tackle here pretty soon too. So if you have a question, we're open to suggestions on what you want us to cover. That's, I mean, the whole point of these was because Troy and I were having these Gabby sessions anyway. We might as well put you guys as a fly on the wall, right?
Might as well record them. Yep. For sure.
Anyway,
for sure.
Yeah. So thank you everybody who stuck it out through this whole video, and we'll keep trying to get these out on a regular basis. But Troy, I appreciate you taking the time today and sitting with me. I know you're busy, and we'll just see each other soon.
You betcha. Thanks everybody. We'll see you soon.
Thanks everybody.